Land art, earthworks, or earth art is an art movement in which landscape and the work of art are inextricably linked. It is also an art form that is created in nature, using natural materials such as soil, rock, organic media, and water with introduced materials such as concrete, metal, asphalt, or mineral pigments. Sculptures are not placed in the landscape, rather, the landscape is the means of their creation. Often earth-moving equipment is involved. The works frequently exist in the open, located well away from civilization, left to change and erode under natural conditions. Many of the first works, created in the deserts of Nevada, New Mexico, Utah or Arizona were ephemeral in nature and now only exist as video recordings or photographic documents. They also pioneered a category of art called site-specific sculpture, designed for a particular outdoor location. History. Land art is an artistic protest against the perceived artificiality, plastic aesthetics and ruthless commercialization of art in America in the late 1960s. Exponents of land art rejected the museum or gallery as the setting of artistic activity and developed monumental landscape projects which were beyond the reach of traditional transportable sculpture and a commercial art market. Land art was inspired by minimal art and conceptual art but also by modern movements such as De-Style, Cubism, Minimalism and the work of Konstantin Brashentsevsky unregistered trademark and Joseph Beuys. Many of the artists associated with land art had been involved with minimal art and conceptual art. Osamu Noguchi's 1941 design for Contoured Playground in New York is sometimes interpreted as an important early piece of land art even though the artist himself never called his work land art, but simply sculpture. His influence on contemporary land art, landscape architecture and environmental sculpture is evident in many works today. Alan Sonfest is a pioneer of an alternative approach to working with nature and culture that he began in 1965 by bringing historical nature and sustainable art back into New York City. His most inspirational work is Time Landscape, an indigenous forest he planted in New York City. He also created several other time landscapes around the world such as Circles of Time in Florence, Italy documenting the historical usage of the land, and recently at the De Cordova Sculpture Park and Museum outside Boston. According to critic Barbara Rose, writing in Artforum in 1969, he had become disillusioned with the commodification and insularity of gallery-bound art. In 1967, the art critic Grace Glueck writing in the New York Times declared the first earthwork was done by Douglas Leachter and Richard Saba at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. The sudden appearance of land art in 1968 can be located as a response by a generation of artists mostly in their late 20s to the heightened political activism of the year and the emerging environmental and women's liberation movements. The movement began in October 1968 with the group exhibition Earthworks at the Dwan Gallery in New York. In February 1969, Willoughby Sharp curated the Earth Art exhibition at the Andrew Dickson White Museum of Art at Cornell University, Ithaca, New York. The artists included were Walter de Maria, Jan Dibberts, Hans Hark, Michael Heiser, Neil Jenny, Richard Long, David Medler, Robert Morris, Dennis Oppenheim, Robert Smithson, and Gunda Wecker. The exhibition was directed by Thomas W. Lavitt. Gordon Matta Clark, who lived in Ithaca at the time, was invited by Sharp to help the artists in Earth Art with the on-site execution of their works for the exhibition. Perhaps the best-known artist who worked in this genre was the American Robert Smithson, whose 1968 essay The Sedimentation of the Mind, Earth Projects provided a critical framework for the movement as a reaction to the disengagement of modernism from social issues as represented by the critic Clement Greenberg. His best-known piece, and probably the most famous piece of all land art, is the Spiral Jetty, for which Smithson arranged rock, earth and algae so as to form a long spiral-shaped jetty protruding into Great Salt Lake in northern Utah, U.S. How much of the work, if any, is visible is dependent on the fluctuating water levels. Since its creation, the work has been completely covered, and then uncovered again, by water. Smithson's gravel mirror with cracks and dust is an example of land art existing in a gallery space rather than in the natural environment. It consists of a pile of gravel by the side of a partially mirrored gallery wall. In its simplicity of form and concentration in the materials themselves, this and other pieces of land art have an affinity with minimalism. There is also a relationship to art povera in the use of materials traditionally considered unartistic, or worthless. The Italian Germano Celente, founder of Art Povera, was one of the first curator to promote land art. Land artists have tended to be American, with other prominent artists in this field including Carl Andre, Alice Aycock, Walter de Maria, Hans Herk, Michael Heiser, Nancy Holt, Arne Mendieta, Dennis Oppenheim, Andrew Rogers, Charles Ross, Robert Smithson, Alan Sonfist, and James Turrell. Turrell began work in 1972 on possibly the largest piece of land art thus far, reshaping the earth surrounding the extinct Roden crater volcano in Arizona. Perhaps the most prominent non-American land artists are the British Chris Drury, Andy Goldsworthy, Peter Hutchinson, Richard Long and the Australian Andrew Rogers. In 1973 Jake Tilicki begins to lay out blank canvases or paper sheets in the natural environment for the nature to create art. Some projects by the artists Christo and Jean-Claude have also been considered land art by some, though the artists themselves consider this incorrect. Joseph Bee's concept of social sculpture influenced land art, and his 7,000 icon project of 1982 to plant 7,000 oak trees has many similarities to land art processes. Rogers' OE Rhythms of Life Euro project is the largest contemporary land art undertaking in the world, forming a chain of stone sculptures, or geoglyphs, around the globe. Euro 12 sites in disparate exotic locations. Up to 3 geoglyphs are located in each site. Eduardo Sanguinetti, the Latino-American philosopher and land artist, presented in 1979 his sculptures in earth. They were placed in natural spaces. They became functional as plants and animals made their homes in that particular topozo installated en La Pampa Desert. Later they acquired the noise of codes capable of classifying smells and colors, and will complete the original idea of our artist, who was at that time absorbed by the countryside and its specular radiation. In his land art performance Solemn, in the zoomorphy of that horse that greatly seduced the audience of the Centro Cultural Recoleta, Amarillo Total, the name of the horse, not only stopped the ecologic blow but also paraded the models who had been completely painted by our artist, their naked painted bodies put another body to painting, with artisan colors prepared with earth and plants pigments. In Sanguinetti's essay Alter Ego, he said, spontaneous activity in nature. In nature, there is a type of spontaneous activity. This concept does not exist in cultured man, and if it does remain in children, it is like a faint reminiscence of the primitive mind. Consequently, I think that the survival of an awareness of the supernatural in nature, should, in all works of land art, be the thing which animates everything. Land artists in America relied mostly on wealthy patrons and private foundations to fund their often costly projects. With the sudden economic downturn of the mid-1970s, funds from these sources largely stopped. With the death of Robert Smithson in a plane crash in 1973, the movement lost one of its most important figureheads and faded out. Charles Ross continues to work on the Star Axis project, which he began in 1971. Michael Heiser continues his work on City, and James Turrell continues to work on the Roden Crater project. In most respects, land art has become part of mainstream public art, and in many cases the term land art is misused to label any kind of art in nature, even though conceptually not related to the avant-garde works by the pioneers of land art. Contemporary land artists. YATOO, a Korean nature artists, unregistered trademark association which was founded in 1981. Started working with nature equipped with nothing but empty hands and wide-open minds and seeking direct inspirations from nature. YATOO International Project, is a newly organized project and is based on the idea that the nature we live in is seamlessly connected regardless of the human-designated borderlines. See also: environmental art, environmental sculpture, land arts of the American West, site-specific art, ecological art, ecofeminist art, ecovention. References. Notes. Further reading Lawrence Alloway, Wolfgang Becker, Robert Rosenblum al., Alan Sonquist, Nature, The End of Art, Gliori, Dist. Thames and Hudson Florence, Italy, 2004 ISBN 0-615-12533-6, Max Andrews, Land, Art, A Cultural Ecology Handbook. London 2006 ISBN 978-0-901469-57-1, John Beardsley, Earthworks and Beyond. Contemporary Art in the Landscape. New York, 1998 ISBN 0-7892-0296-4, Susan Boettger, Earthworks, Art in the Landscape of the 60s. University of California Press 2002. ISBN 0-520-24116-9, Amy Dempsey, Destination Art. Berkeley, California, 2006 ISBN 9780520250253, Edoardo Sanguinetti, Alter Ego. ISBN 9780946270170, Carlos Espartaco, Eduardo Sanguinetti, The Experience of Limit Buenos Aires, Argentina, Editions de Art Gaglanen, first published 1989 ISBN 950-9004-98-7, Michel Draget, Nils Udo, Bob Versturen, Bruce Eels, Atelier 340, 1992, Jack Flam. Robert Smithson, The Collected Writings, Berkeley, California, 1996 ISBN 0-520-20385-2, John K. Grand, New York, London. Balance, Art and Nature, Black Rose Books, 1994, 2003 ISBN 1-55164-234-4, Eleanor Hartney, Andrew Rogers Geoglyphs, Rhythms of Life, Edizioni Carta SRL, Italy, 2009 ISBN 978-88-8158-712-4, Robert Hobbs, Robert Smithson, A Retrospective View, Wilhelm Lanebroek Museum, Duisburg/Herbert F. Johnson Museum of Art, Cornell University, Jeffrey Kastner, Brian Wallace, Land and Environmental Art. Boston 1998 ISBN 0-7148-4519-1, Lucia Lippard, Overlay Contemporary Art and the Art of Prehistory. New York, 1983 ISBN 978-394-51812-1, Udo Wielacher, Between Landscape Architecture and Land Art. Basel, Berlin, Boston 1999 ISBN 3-7643-6119-0, Edward Lucy Smith and John K. Grand, Art-Nature Dialogues, Interviews with Environmental Artists, New York, 2004 ISBN 978-0-7914-6194-5, David Peat and Edward Lucy Smith Dialogues in Diversity, Italy, Pari Publishing, 2007, ISBN 978-88-901-960-7-2, Chris Taylor and Bill Gilbert. Land Arts of the American West. Austin, University of Texas Press. 2009. ISBN 978-0-292-71672-8, Gillis A. Tyberian, Land Art. Ed. Cara Copyright 19,932,012. External links, Monumental Land Art of the United States. Alan Sonquist Official Website, Artist in Nature International Network, Dinaran.com, About Land Art, Land Arts of the American West, Official UNM Land Arts of the American West Program Website, Land and Environmental Artists and Art, Australian Land Arts, Roden Crater by James Terrell, Jake Tillicki Land and Environmental Art Projects, Land Art Project in South Africa, Broken Circle, Land Art Contemporary, Absart Observatoire du Land Art, French, Portail du Land Art, German. Using land art as a form of advertising, Center for Land Use Interpretation entry for land art.